And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, again, rest in peace, Bill Walton, for those of you guys who did not watch the third segment. And in this next segment, we are going to be talking about the Pelicans and their preference with Dejounte Murray in a potential trade for the Hawks guard. So the Pelicans, expected to they're expected to gauge some sort of trade interest in, I believe, Brandon Ingram. Like they want to see if they can find some sort of value for Brandon Ingram. Now, the Western Conference, it could look to trade Brandon Ingram and try to rebuild their roster around Zion Williamson and his unique skill set. I believe they think that Dejounte Murray, a guard, having a guard to aid Zion Williamson is going to be rather beneficial to them and their offense. And I believe they would rather have Dejounte in the lineup as opposed to Trae Young in the lineup. And at least according to Adam Taylor. This is where the article comes from, and that's the author of that article. In a recent article coming in from New Orleans, NOLA.com, Christian Clark noted that if the Pelicans re-engage with the Atlanta Hawks trade talks and potential trades, they would most likely prefer Dejounte rather than Trae Young. So this is the quote: "If the Pelicans re-engage the Hawks, they could look to pry away Murray or Young," Clark reported. Even though Young is the more talented player, the Pelicans seem to hold more interest in Murray, league sources said. The 6'5" Murray is not as much of a defensive liability as the 6'1" Young can be. And he's also on a cheaper contract. Murray will make $25.5 million next season. Meanwhile, Trae Young is going to be making $43 million in the next season. So Atlanta is also expected to trade at least one of its guards at the end of this summer. They just still have no idea exactly which guard they're going to trade, or if it's even going to be both, honestly. But the Murray and Young experience, it hasn't worked out as well as they thought it would. And it's clear that both of them are not the best at running the offense simultaneously and operating as primary ball handlers. They're nothing like Luka and Kyrie's chemistry, where it's one of them has the ball in isolation and the other one just stands there. It hasn't worked as well for the Hawks, as it's worked for the Dallas Mavericks. And having Murray in the lineup, it would make the most sense for the Pelicans due to the potential fit that he could have with CJ McCollum. CJ McCollum is not a very good defender as a shooting guard. This was I've mentioned this before several times when I mentioned either CJ or Damian Lillard. The fact that those two guards had no defense was one of the many overlooked reasons why Portland was unable to do anything in the playoffs outside of 2019. And it was their lack of defense. Now, CJ's defense has not improved whatsoever. He's getting older. His defense isn't going to get better. And he isn't known for his defense whatsoever. He's more known for his offense. Strictly offense. Now, Dejounte is, on top of the fact that he's a much taller guard than Trae Young. It really, it puts him at a much greater advantage on the defensive side of the ball. So he would provide additional size along with having the playmaking and the scoring at the guard position. So he's also one of the most his defense on the perimeter is phenomenal. So he played 78 games for the Hawks this season. He averaged 22 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, shot 45% from the field, and 36% from 3. And the scoring production, if you pair that up with the rest of the Pelicans lineup, it could be a really, really good fit for him. And if you, it would definitely be a much different change of pace because when you think of the lineup that the Pelicans have right now with Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, and Zion, they're phenomenal scorers in their own right. But Brandon Ingram doesn't really have the same defense as Dejounte would have, at least given their positions. Like, Ingram's not really known for being that much of a defender when he was on any of the teams that he's been on. When he's on the Pelicans, when he was on the Lakers, he has not been known as a defender. His main gimmick is scoring. And that doesn't really help your team when your other guard when the other guard's gimmick is also scoring. Like, it doesn't necessarily work, and it doesn't really mesh that well, or as well as it could. Now, you add Dejounte Murray, not only are you getting the same scoring production, but you're also getting a lot more defensive production coming in from him at the guard, as well as being a much better playmaker, and allowing CJ to go back into that role of being just a primary scorer instead of being a playmaker. Because that was sort of like the role that he had to take on being on the Pelicans. And when he was on Portland with Damian Lillard, Dame was more or less the ball carrier and the point guard and the decision maker on the team, where CJ was just the second option and the second scorer. Now he can sort of go back into being that second scoring option for the team. And I say second scoring because Zion is obviously going to be the first scoring option for the team. But now CJ doesn't necessarily have to worry about playmaking. Now he just has to worry about getting a bucket, which is something that he's good at. Now, of course, the Pelicans could also opt to not pursue a deal with the Hawks, but they're looking to improve their current guard rotation. So if they're not going to try to engage in a deal with the Hawks, I don't know exactly what other team has a good enough guard for their rotation. I feel like Dejounte, that's definitely like the best option on the trade block for now. And it's like Murray, he would be the ideal target. And he's proven to play he's part of the team, and he could be the lead ball handler as well. And the Pelicans would allow him to contend while growing into the role that suits his overall skill set, according to the article that I'm looking at right now. Whether the Pelicans see things the same way will remain to be seen. So it could be, and granted, that would also allow the Hawks to be able to, think about it. If depending on who the Pelicans trade, if they are looking to trade Brandon Ingram for Dejounte, I don't know exactly what the trade details are going to be, what's going to be happening in that front office. I have no clue. But if they do give Trae Young that other scoring option with Brandon Ingram, that would definitely help the team a little bit more than having two playmakers and two ball-dominant guards. Trae Young, he's always going to average a lot of assists. He's been consistent with his assist averages throughout the entirety of his career. So adding another scoring option is only going to make things a lot easier for him, because now you got to worry about this super tall small forward as opposed to worrying about these just two guards. I feel like that dynamic could really work. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you think that dynamic will work, if you think that it's not going to work, if you think they're just going to remain the same mid-tier team that they've been throughout the last 2 years. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. But with that, we are out of time for this fourth segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the special fifth segment, where I talk about the possibility of a Celtics versus Mavs final. And I'll just go ahead and talk about what I think is going to happen if that series goes down, and just how that series is going to be amazing. So I'll be right back after this short break, so stay tuned.